Imagine being told you're not good enough because of the color of your skin. That's exactly what one athlete faced when a racist coach shut the door on his dreams, but instead of giving up, he turned that rejection into fuel, going on to become an Olympic gold medalist. This is the story of resilience, defiance, and triumph against all odds. Stay tuned to witness how one man's rejection turned into his greatest victory. Marcus wasn't just fast. He was born to run. Ever since he was a little kid, barefoot on the cracked pavement of his neighborhood, he had outrun everyone, whether it was racing down alleyways with friends or chasing the city bus when he was late for school. He had a gift, but no one around him ever thought much of it. Life in his part of town wasn't about dreams. It was about survival. His mother worked 2 jobs, barely making enough to put food on the table. His father, gone before he could even remember. They lived in a small apartment with peeling walls and a front door that barely locked. Money was tight, opportunities were rare, and people didn't dare to dream big. But Marcus did. He was 14 when he made a promise to himself. One day I will win an Olympic gold medal in sprinting. He didn't know how. He didn't know when. But he knew it was going to happen. School was the only place where he could show what he was made of. During PE class, the coach would whistle, and Marcus would take off like a bullet. The other kids ran, but Marcus flew. Even the teachers were stunned. "Damn kid, you got rockets in your feet," his PE coach had once said. But there was no real training, no proper shoes, no diet plans or coaching techniques, just raw, untamed speed. That's when his friends, Jordan and Ethan, told him about Braden's Elite Athletics Training Center. "That place is serious, man," Jordan said. "They train kids to be champions, and they sponsor athletes too. If you got potential, they'll cover all your expenses. You don't need money to train there, just talent." Marcus's heart pounded. This was it. This was his shot. The very next day, he and his friends went straight to the training center. It was bigger than he had imagined. A massive outdoor track, a weightlifting area, even a separate building for advanced conditioning. He could see young athletes, some his age, some older, training with top-tier equipment. The sound of feet pounding against the track filled the air, along with the sharp whistles of trainers calling out commands. Marcus felt alive. A man emerged from the main building, a tall, broad-shouldered figure wearing a blue tracksuit. His hair was short and graying at the temples, and his sharp blue eyes scanned the facility with the authority of someone who knew he was in charge. Coach Braden, he noticed Marcus and his friends approaching, and raised an eyebrow. "What do you guys need?" His voice was firm, almost dismissive. Jordan and Ethan spoke up first, eager and excited. "Coach, this is Marcus. He's crazy fast. One of the best runners we've ever seen. He wants to join the center. He's got real potential." Marcus stepped forward. "Sir, I promise you, I'll give my best. One day I will bring an Olympic gold medal in sprinting." His voice was steady, filled with determination. For a moment, Sullivan just stared. Then he laughed. A sharp, mocking laugh. "You black kids think you can do anything, huh?" He sneered. Marcus's stomach twisted. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, but he kept his face calm. "Sir, all I ask for is a chance." Sullivan shook his head, stepping closer. "Look at you," he said, eyeing Marcus's worn-out sneakers, his faded t-shirt. "You look like a homeless kid. You think you belong in a place like this? Drop your little dream, boy. You're not athlete material." The words hit like a brick to the chest. Malik and Ethan exchanged stunned glances. The air around them felt thick, heavy. Malik's voice rose angry. "You're judging him based on his skin, aren't you? That's racist." Marcus took a deep breath. He had been judged all his life. He had heard whispers when he walked into stores, had seen the way people clutched their purses a little tighter when he passed by. But this was different. This was his future, being denied because of the color of his skin. "Sir," Marcus said, keeping his voice firm, "judge me on my skills, not my color. Let me prove myself. Just one race. One shot." Sullivan smirked. "I don't need to see anything. I already know your type. Lazy, undisciplined. No chance of making it to the top." Marcus could feel the heat rising inside him, but he refused to lose control. "One day, you'll regret this," he said quietly. "We'll meet again. Sullivan's expression didn't change. Doubt it. Now get the fuck out of here. Silence. Marcus and his friends turned and walked away. But inside him, something had changed. He wasn't just chasing a dream anymore. He was chasing a promise. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the cracked ceiling of his tiny bedroom. He thought about every moment in his life when he had been overlooked, underestimated, pushed aside. You don't belong here. Sullivan's words echoed in his mind, but instead of breaking him, they hardened him. Marcus got up before the sun the next morning. While the city still slept, he ran, mile after mile, pushing himself harder than ever. His muscles burned, his lungs screamed, but he didn't stop. He imagined Brian watching, imagined proving him wrong. Day after day he trained alone. No professional guidance, no fancy gym, just the streets and his willpower. He did sprints between streetlights, used old tires as weights, and studied professional runners online, mimicking their techniques. By the time he turned, 16, he wasn't just fast, he was unstoppable. He started entering underground races, local competitions, where street athletes tested their speed. He crushed them all. He raced against grown men, against kids from wealthier schools, with expensive gear. He won every single time. By 1918, he had built a reputation. The kid with no coach. People started whispering about him. But still, he knew he needed something more. He needed a real coach. Someone who wouldn't judge him by his skin, but by his talent. And that's when he met Darius, a black former Olympic sprinter. A man who had faced the same battles Marcus was fighting now. A man who would change his life forever. But Marcus had no idea that his real test was still ahead of him. Marcus had already built himself into a machine. Raw speed, unmatched endurance, and an unbreakable spirit. But deep inside he knew something was missing. He had spent 4 years training alone, running on cracked sidewalks, sprinting on empty football fields, and pushing his body to its limit without guidance. He was fast as tartar, but he wasn't yet a harm champion. To compete at the Olympic level, speed alone wasn't enough. There were techniques, strategies, and fine-tuned mechanics that only an elite coach could teach. Without them, his dream would remain just a dream. That's when he heard the name. Darius Reed. Darius was a legend, a Taos, former Olympian, a black athlete who had once faced the same discrimination Marcus had. After retiring, Darius dedicated his life to training the next generation of runners, but he was a selective. He only trained those with a fire in their hearts, those who wouldn't break under pressure. Marcus had never met him, but he knew. Darius was the only one who could take him to the next level. It wasn't easy tracking Darius down. The man had no official training center, no big facility like Braden's. He wasn't interested in fame or money. He only cared about results. After weeks of searching, Marcus finally got a lead. A small gym on the south side of town where Darius sometimes trained boxers and martial artists. It wasn't a running track, but it was his best chance. The moment Marcus stepped inside, he knew this place was different. The air was thick with sweat and determination. Fighters punched heavy bags. Jump ropes whipped against the floor, and the sound of grunts and shouts echoed through the dimly lit space. And there, in the corner, stood Darius Reed. He was in his late 40s, but built like a warrior, broad shoulders, muscular arms, and eyes that had seen both victories and defeats. His presence alone was intimidating. Marcus approached, his heart pounding. "Coach Darius?" Marcus said, his voice steady. Darius turned, eyeing him up and down. "Who's asking?" Marcus took a deep breath. "My name's Marcus. I want to be the fastest man in the world. I need a coach." Darius smirked. "That's so. You got money." Marcus shook his head. "No." Darius folded his arms. "Then why should I train you?" Marcus met his gaze without hesitation. "Because I won't stop until I win Olympic gold. I'll put in the work. I'll do whatever it takes." For a moment, Darius said nothing. "I win Olympic gold. I'll put in the work. I'll do whatever it takes." For a moment, Darius said nothing. He just stared, reading Marcus like a book. Then he asked one simple question. "Why do you want it?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "Because I promised myself. Because someone told me I wasn't good enough, that I didn't belong. And because I want to prove them wrong." Darius's expression changed, a flicker of recognition. He had been of that kid mites once, the one they said would never make it. Finally, Darius nodded. All right, kid, let's see what you got. Marcus thought he had been training hard before. He had no idea what real training looked like. Darius's methods were ruthless. The first day, he took Marcus to a dirt track behind an abandoned school and had him sprint until his legs gave out. No timers, no praise, no breaks. Again, Darius said every time Marcus collapsed. Marcus ran until he puked, until his muscles screamed, until he could barely stand. Then, the real training began. Speed alone won't win you gold, Darius told him. You need efficiency. You need precision. You need to run smarter, not just harder. Double asterisk. Marcus learned us everything. Proper breathing techniques. The science of stride length, explosive starts. How to distribute energy in different races. Darius, he broke him down and rebuilt him. The gym became his second home. Marcus trained at 4 a.m. before the sun rose, and again after dark. He ran on sand to strengthen his legs, did lung-bursting hill sprints, and lifted weights until his arms shook. There were days he wanted to quit, days when his body screamed for rest, when the pain felt unbearable. But every time he thought about stopping, he remembered Harkin Sullivan's words, "You don't belong here." And he pushed harder. Darius didn't just train Marcus physically. He trained his maggot mind. The Olympics aren't just about who's the fastest, Darius said one night as they sat on the track. It's about who can handle the pressure. When you step onto that starting line, millions of eyes will be on you. The moment the gun goes off, everything you've worked for comes down to those few seconds. If you let doubt creep in, you've already lost. Marcus nodded, absorbing every word. Are you ready for that moment? Darius asked. Marcus didn't blink. I've been ready my whole life. A year before the Olympics, Darius gave Marcus one final test. An underground race against some of the best runners in the country. No cameras, no crowds, just raw competition. The runners lined up. Some had trained under Olympic-level coaches. They scoffed when they saw Marcus, a nobody with no official record. When the gun went off, Marcus flew. He didn't just win, he dominated. He crossed the finish line so far ahead that even the announcer was stunned. That night, Darius patted Marcus on the shoulder. You're ready. Marcus had come a long way. From a rejected kid running on cracked sidewalks to a finely tuned athlete standing at the edge of history. Marcus entered the Olympic qualifiers. The competition was fierce. Some of the best runners in the world, including 3 athletes from Braden's training center. The same place that had rejected him. Braden was there too. He watched Marcus step onto the track, his face unreadable. Marcus didn't care. He wasn't running for revenge. He was running for his promise. The gun went off. Marcus exploded forward. Perfect form. Perfect execution. By the time he crossed the finish line, he had secured his spot on the Tuna Olympic team. Braden sat in stunned silence. Marcus walked past him, not saying a word, because he had already won. The real battle, however, was yet to come. The Olympics were waiting. The day had finally arrived. For years, Marcus had imagined this moment, standing on the grandest stage of them all, the Olympic Games. The roar of the crowd, the weight of expectation, the flashing cameras capturing history in the making. But no amount of imagination could prepare him for the on-electric atmosphere of the real thing. The Marge Olympic Stadium was packed with over 80,000 spectators, with millions more watching from home. Some were cheering for their country's champion, others for their favorite athlete. But Marcus knew one thing for sure. No one was here for him. He was an unknown, a nobody, just a kid who had trained in the shadows. But that was about to change. Back in the warm-up area, Marcus took a deep breath, stretching his legs, rolling his shoulders. His heart was pounding, not from fear but from excitement. This was it. Coach Darius Reed stood beside him, arms crossed, calm as ever. He had seen this moment play out before, not with Marcus, but with himself, decades ago. He knew the pressure, the stakes, the doubt creeping in at the last second. Marcus, Darius said, his voice steady. Remember what I told you? Marcus nodded. Run like it's the last race of my life. Darius smirked. And Marcus exhaled. And forget everyone else. This track belongs to me. Darius's eyes gleamed with pride. Exactly. When you step on that line, it doesn't matter who trained harder, who has better shoes, who the crowd is cheering for. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is who wants it more. Marcus clenched his fists. I want it more. Darius patted his shoulder. Then go take it. Marcus walked to the track, stepping onto Santa, lane 6. The air was thick with tension. On either side of him were Van Sate, the fastest men in the world. Athletes with world records, champions from previous Olympics, men whose names were etched in history. And in lane 4 stood a familiar figure. One of Braden's top runners. A young man with Olympic experience, trained in one of the finest facilities in the world. The same facility that had rejected Marcus. Their eyes met. The runner smirked as if to say, "You don't belong here." Marcus didn't react. He didn't need to. He had spent years preparing for this moment. The stadium went silent as the irate sprinters stepped onto their blocks. Marcus crouched down, positioning himself perfectly. Every muscle in his body was coiled, ready to explode. His fingers pressed against the rough track surface. His mind was empty. No fear. No doubt. Only the race. The official raised his hand. On your marks. Marcus took a deep breath. Set. Every nerve in his body lit up. The gunshot rang out. Marcus exploded, out of the blocks like a bullet. His reaction time was flawless. Every lesson from Darius, every sprint he had run, every ounce of pain he had endured, this was the moment it all paid off. The first 30 meters were about acceleration. Marcus kept his body low, driving forward with powerful, calculated strides. The competition was by a faster than he had ever faced. The runner from Braden's academy was slightly ahead. The reigning world champion was right there too. But Marcus didn't panic. He reached the high 40-meter mark and began to rise, shifting into high top speed. His form was perfect, knees high, arms pumping, breath steady. At high 60 meters, he was neck and neck with Sullivan's runner. The crowd was roaring. The entire world was watching. At 80 meters, something clicked inside Marcus. He thought of all the times he had been doubted, all the times he had run on cracked sidewalks, all the days he trained alone while others had professional coaches. And then he unleashed everything. The final 20 meters felt like slow motion. The world champion, Braden's runner, and Marcus were side by side. The finish line was seconds away. Marcus pushed harder than he ever had before, and in the final 5 meters he pulled ahead. He crossed the finish line. For a moment, there was nothing. No cheers, no screams, no celebration. Just silence. Everyone in the stadium was stunned. Then, the announcer's voice cracked through the speakers, and the gold medal goes to Marcus Reed. The crowd erupted. Marcus blinked, barely able to process what had happened. He looked at the screen. His time flashed. 9.77 seconds. A new Olympic record. He had done it. He had won. Tears welled up in his eyes as he collapsed to his knees. His mother, watching from the stands, was screaming with joy. Darius rushed onto the track, lifting Marcus into the air like he had just won the world. The cameras flashed. The commentators couldn't believe it. A nobody had just beaten the best in the world. The same runner from Braden's academy, who had smirked at Marcus before the race. He stood there in shock, hands on his knees, unable to believe what had just happened. And then, in the crowd, Marcus spotted someone. Braden. Braden had watched it all. His own runners had lost. The boy he had rejected had just won Olympic gold. Marcus walked over, gold medal, hanging around his neck. Darius followed behind him, arms crossed. Marcus stood in front of Sullivan, looking him dead in the eye. "You told me I didn't belong," Marcus said. His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was just the truth. Sullivan swallowed hard. "I was wrong," Darius smirked. "Damn right you were." Sullivan exhaled, looking at Marcus's medal. "I should have trained you. I see that now," Marcus nodded. "But you didn't. And I still won." Braden's face fell. He had spent years building an elite training center, producing world-class athletes. But tonight, his best had lost to the boy he had rejected. Marcus didn't need an apology. He didn't need validation. He had already won. Marcus didn't stop at one gold medal. Over the next decade, he dominated the world of sprinting, setting multiple records and becoming one of the greatest athletes in history. But he never forgot where he came from. Years later, he followed in Darius's footsteps. He built his own training facility, not for profit, but for kids like him. Kids who had been told they weren't good enough. And one day, Sullivan showed up. Older now, humbled by time, he extended a hand. "If you ever need a coach, I'd be honored." Marcus looked at Darius, who just chuckled. Marcus smiled and shook Brian's hand. "Let's change the game." And they did. Because greatness isn't just about winning. It's about lifting others up. Marcus Reed's journey was more than just an underdog story. It was a revolution. He wasn't just a sprinter. He wasn't just an Olympic champion. He became a symbol of resilience, proof that talent and determination can break through any barrier, poverty, doubt, racism. When Braden had rejected him, he could have given up. He could have let that moment define him, but instead he let time fuel him. He trained harder. He found Darius, who saw his worth when others didn't. He shattered records, silenced doubters, and carved his name into history. But the greatest thing he ever did wasn't winning gold. It was the legacy he left behind. Marcus didn't forget the kids who grew up like him, dreaming big, but trapped by small opportunities. He built his own training center, not for the elite, but for the rejected. He scouted talent in places the world overlooked. He coached kids who had nothing but a dream, just like him. And Sullivan, he changed too. Seeing Marcus rise despite his rejection forced him to face his own prejudices. He realized that greatness isn't about the color of an athlete's skin, but the fire in their heart. In the end, the coach who once shut the door on a young black boy became his biggest supporter. And together they rewrote the story for the next generation, because a talent is universal, but opportunity is not. And Marcus Reed made sure generation because a talent is universal, but opportunity is not. And Marcus Reed made sure that would never be the case again.